Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today for this LinkedIn Live. I am really excited that you're here, and I really appreciate you spending time on this super important topic. So, let me give you a little bit of background why I decided to do it. So, I live in Israel, and whether you listen to the news or not, I'm sure all of us are aware of the really difficult times that we're experiencing here. And at times, it's actually so difficult for me that I just want to give up. I just want to cave in. I want to, crawl into a hole and just not participate. And I know that Israel is not the only place in the world that is experiencing such difficulties and turmoils and trauma. And I thought it was important for me to share with you what I do in order to light myself up, ignite myself, because I do believe that we all have an inner spark. And that even though at times it might feel like the spark is really low, it's still there. It is still there. And sometimes we have to shake ourselves. Sometimes we have to be kind and loving and gentle with ourselves, but oftentimes it just takes a spark. And the spark can come in so many different ways. And today I'm going to share a little bit with you what I do and what I do professionally and how I have assisted myself and how I assist many people in order to get that spark going and to ignite the inner power, the inner fire, and so that we can make a difference in the world. Because listen, I believe that our souls, and maybe you don't believe in souls, we're here to progress. We're here to learn. We're here to make a difference. And even though at times we forget about it, that is how our brain is wired. This is how we function. And when we move something forward, when we help ourselves or when we help the world, that is actually when we are at our best, when we feel good, when we feel good about ourselves. And that's the best possible way for us to be as a species, as human beings, as we are here on the planet. So that's why we're here. And I encourage you to write in the chat, whether you're seeing this on LinkedIn or Facebook, or maybe you're watching the replay. Tell us, why are you here? What inspired you to come and watch this? And I'm promising you that there will be some really good tips for you and some good information and how you can uh, ignite your own power, your own spark. And with all that, stay till the end, and we're going to get started. So, my name is Dr. Barbara Schwark. I am a global executive coach. I also do some career coaching and business coaching. I was born and raised in Germany, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about myself later. And I have a company, it's called Clear Intentions International, and I've been coaching for about 25 years, thousands of people, hundreds of companies, all the way from San Diego to India right now. Now, I want to start with a very powerful quote, and that is by Franklin D. Roosevelt. And if you know a little bit about history and about him, you know that, not only was he dealing with World War II, but he also had all kinds of physical challenges that he was dealing with. And for him to keep igniting that spark and his power to make a difference in the world was really an incredible skill and an ability that he has. So we're going to start with a quote by him. He says, "The only limit to our realization of tomorrow is our doubts of today." So take a moment to really look at the doubts that you have about today. And I know it's like, it doesn't take a lot to look around and for us to find some doubts. But oftentimes it's not so much what's going on really that is the real issue. The real issue as I see it is the way we respond to it. How do I respond to war? How do I respond to trauma? How do I respond to, things are not going the way I want to, and me feeling frustrated and angry and maybe anxious and depressed. So what is my response to that? So today is not just going to be another rah presentation. Today is actually a presentation that's filled with tips. We're going to talk about what I call the inner critic, but we're also going to talk about limiting beliefs, and I'm going to give you some tips on how to get started. But I wanted to take a moment to tell you a little bit more about myself, which I usually don't do, but here we go. So I put some pictures together just to give you a little bit of a better idea about myself. And you can see there I am in the corner there, in the upper left-hand corner. I look kind of sad, and I had what I would say, pretty traumatic childhood. And because of that, I had very low self-esteem. I didn't think I was good for anything, and that I would be able to amount to anything. I was also dyslexic, so I was really, really bad in school. I felt a lot of abandonment for most of my childhood. And when I was done, I barely graduated from high school. So when I was done, I had no clue. I didn't know who I was, what I wanted, and if it was even possible for somebody like me to ever be able to, excuse me, to support themselves. And with that, I went out. I came to Israel. I volunteered for a year and a half, and I started to learn, who am I? And I love being in Israel. I fell in love with the country, the culture. But I think a big reason for that was because I started to get some positive feedback. I learned who I was, and I started to nurture those parts about myself, the learnings that I had. And when I went home a year and a half later, I still wasn't so clear about what I wanted to do, but at least I felt stronger within myself. So in a roundabout way, I ended up in the United States, where I lived for 27 years. And early on, I got involved with a personal development organization. And I loved it because for me, that was a spark. That was a time in my life when somebody assisted me to light my own fire, to ignite me. And it was at an exercise that we did on a Monday night where somebody asked me, "What do you want, Barbara?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know." And I would just say something. And the next question was, how could you get it? And I was thinking about how I could get what I wanted. And I don't even remember what I wanted at the time, probably be some material thing. And then came the important question. And that question was, what experience are you looking for? And that answer then became the answer to the next question. So, what do you want? And I was then on that track of understanding that what I really was after was experiences. And at the very end of the exercise, because it was like a loop and it went on for 10 minutes, I was like, I want to be happy. I want to love myself. I want to feel confident. That were the things that I wanted to experience in my life. And that was a moment, and it was like 35 years ago, where something was ignited inside of me. And it was because of a very, very simple exercise and somebody who was willing to do this exercise with me. So from there, I started my coaching journey. And I told you I've been doing this for 25 years with large global companies like Amazon and Bombardier and Bayer. And I really love what I do. I feel honored. I will talk a little bit more about it because of the special kind of tool that I use in coaching. And so I went and started coaching. And about 10 years ago, I came to Israel. I was visiting friends, met my former partner, and I have two little kids. I just turned 60, and I have a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old. And, that's a challenge in and of itself. So, and that's what brings us today. I started 4 companies. I started my first company in my 20s. It was a sort of painting renovation company. And my second company, my coaching company, in my 30s, still doing that. And then in my 40s and 50s, I started 2 more companies, a skincare company and a officiant business. I sold both of them successfully, and I'm proud to say that with my companies, I've made millions of dollars. And it's good for me to acknowledge that. So it's possible if you're committed and if you're willing to constantly or from time to time to reignite your power, that you can accomplish many, many things. And it doesn't have to be in the world of, making money or uh, being successful or creating companies. It could be anything. It could be having a beautiful garden. It could be finding the career that you love, or it could be having a family. So I'm not saying one is better than the other. It just really depends on who you are and what's important to you. So that's a little bit about me. So let's talk about today's objective. There's basically 4 things I want to talk about. And you see this beautiful graphic that I have here. It's like my little plant, my little seed that's growing. And we do want to ignite our inner fire. So you call it power, you can call it spirit, you can call it fire, whatever word you want to use. And by the way, if I'm saying something that sort of annoys you, or you're like, I don't agree with it, discard it. Make this time work for you. So just switch it in your head, and so that what I am saying actually works for you. So we want to silence the inner critic. And I'm going to give you some exercises on how to work with that, because the inner critic is a composite of beliefs that we have, experiences that were built on or created because of the beliefs. It's society, it's norms, it's intergenerational trauma. It's really a composite of that. And that inner critic, its job is to keep us small. It wants us to be safe. So in a sense, it's like a composite of the reptilian, which is the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, which is pleasing. So we have now established that it's not just fight, flight, or freeze, but there's actually a please or pleasing response that is also a survival response, because we don't want to be abandoned, because then when we're abandoned, we're going to be alone, then we're going to die. So it's important to understand this part. And when we sort of look at the inner critic, or we put it in that framework, we can get our hands around it, we can work with it, and it will help us to deal with the, that constant noise that we have in our head that says, I can't, but I can, or it's too hard and I'm not good enough. And I give you some tools to deal with that. We're going to look at clarity, because it's way easier for us to manifest something or to create something when we have clarity. And oftentimes when I work with my clients, they want to do something and they're quick to execute, but they haven't done the inner work. So the goals they are not necessarily connected to the values and what they really want. And later they find out, I'm like, oops, that's not really what I wanted. Oh, it was sort of like, why did I do this? So it's good for us to pause. It's good for us to do the inner work, to understand who we are, what we value, what's important to us, and then match the goals and something that I call intentions with that. And then we want to take inspired actions, because, as we say, from nothing comes nothing. And it's not entirely true, but when we move ourselves in action, our chances of actually getting what we want, definitely they increase. And it's good for us to be in action, because we learn, there's movement, and movement, because everything is in movement in the universe, is actually what helps us to move forward. So hopefully that sounds good to you, and that's why you came. All right, so let's take a moment to understand this idea of the inner fire or the inner power. And what I mean by that, and you can see it's this light bulb. It's the passion, the purpose, your motivation, what gets you out of bed in the morning. And you can say, Barbara, I just really don't feel like I want to get out of bed in the morning. And I understand that, but yet you do. And sometimes it's our kids, or sometimes it's the obligation that we have, or sometimes it's, something that we're looking forward to. It's like to take a moment to find that space in your day where you can go back to what you feel passionate about, or to think about the purpose of, what is the purpose, and take that time to identify it and to look at what motivates you. And it doesn't have to be this existential, I have to have the answer for everything. You can do this on a small scale, and you can really look at, what's my life right now? What is my life about? Right now, a big chunk of my life is about my kids. So what is motivating me? I'm motivated by, being my best self and bringing my best self to them. I'm motivated to to inspire them, to educate them, to give them experiences. And on the other side, when I'm motivated by and what is important to me is my work, and I'm very passionate about it, and I feel like this is a big purpose of my life to make a difference in the world, and this is how I've chosen to make a difference. So it doesn't really matter to me whether I'm speaking to somebody that has 2,000 people under them, or whether I'm talking to a budding entrepreneur who's thinking about, how to start a business. For me, it's all the process of helping people identify and then manifest what it is that gets them excited in life. It's important for us to have this in our personal and professional life. As a matter of fact, the statistics show us that 60 or 70% of the people are really, really unhappy in their job. And oftentimes what holds them there is the financial obligation. It's like, oh, I have this big job and I'm making lots of money, but I hate it, but I don't know how to exit myself out because I have all this, financial obligation. And we do, of course, hear about the stories where, corporate executives, they exit out and then they buy a farm and they're now making cheese. And I'm not necessarily saying that's not a good idea, but the idea is, how can I have that sort of as part of my life so that I'm not like throwing this away and then replacing it with something? How can I find the inner fire in my personal and professional life and then have that daily ignite myself and come back to who I am and what I love. So it's important that if you don't have that right now, that you take a little tiny spot and decide, okay, this is an area of my life where I will work on this, where I will find a way to make it happen. And hopefully some of the tools that I'm teaching you today will help you. And for the simple reason of you being physically healthy, consider that when you are in touch with your passion and your inner fire, that you will be healthier, because everything in your body will be working better. Your cells, your blood flow, I'm not a doctor, but I know your brain fluid, and you will feel more alive, and therefore there will be more vitality. And to have more vitality, who doesn't want to have more vitality? We all want to have more vitality. So that's a good reason. Just that reason. Okay, so what are the two main showstoppers that we have that sort of keeps us from doing it? So one, actually, there's probably more, but I want to focus on those two. One of the showstoppers is definitely the gremlin, and I'm going to go into it. And then we have limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs, those are really, really, really powerful, and they're so pervasive and they're everywhere. And if you don't learn anything from today, but this one thing you walk away with, and you start to pay attention to the way that you think, the way that you speak, the way that you analyze things, that would be really good. And what you will find is that the limiting beliefs are so evasive. We say, no, this is too hard, or oh my God, I'm going to die. It's so hard, I'm going to die. It's like, what are we telling ourselves? So just for starters, one of the things that you can do is pay attention to your language and start to phrase things in a positive way. And I'm not saying nanny-panny, like everything's fine and kumbaya and that kind of stuff. No, make it real for yourself. And so that you can say, no, I can do it, or there's going to be a positive outcome, and that you start to look at how you hold yourself back and what you tell yourself on a daily basis of why you can't do something. Because oftentimes it's bullshit. It's some sort of lie that you tell yourself. And once you can say, okay, that was a lie, and then you go deeper and you go deeper and you go deeper and you go deeper until there's nowhere else to go, you will usually find some way to do the turnaround. And you go, oh my God, I see that now. I'm afraid. I'm afraid that I'm going to be disappointed. Or I'm afraid that I'm going to be making a mistake and that people will laugh at me. Those are things that we can deal with. What is really difficult to deal with is when we tell ourselves, I can't. Why can't you? Well, I just can't. So I encourage you, if you're in that kind of state, that you allow yourself to go deeper. And one of the ways that you can do it is through journaling. So what are the results of all those showstoppers? We have lack of clarity. We have lack of motivation. We're overwhelmed. We procrastinate. We have this notion it has to be perfect before if we can do something. And if it's not perfect, it's like not good. We have unrealistic expectations of ourselves and the world and the universe and the way people should perform, should always be happy. We should not have wars. People should not kill one another. It's like we have these expectations. That's how we think the world should be. We are afraid to succeed because then we have to give up all kinds of things. We can't be a victim if we're successful. And we have the fear of failure, of course, because if I fail, that's really bad. And then oftentimes along those things come no responsibility, poor accountability, and all those things that we know that we have. And by the way, I include myself in this pool because of course, I'm a human being, and part of the human nature is that we have these experiences. And like I said, what I think is most important is how we respond to that. All right, so here we are, the gremlin. So in full disclosure, there's a book called Taming Your Gremlin by Richard Carson. He's a psychologist, and we had to read this book in coaching training. I was trained by the Coaches Training Institute. I'm not sure they still have that as a textbook, but it was written by a guy. And I felt that the approach was really male. And I got this book from a friend of mine, and she was going through coaching school, and she was a sister in a convent. And so she put her kind of feminist comments on it, and then I put my comments on it. And so I've taken this concept and I've really expanded, and I changed some of it, and I want to present it to you. So what is the gremlin? The gremlin is that composite. It's that voice. It's that nag that we have that constantly keeps us small and tells us we can't do it. It's not good enough, or don't risk it. Or sometimes it can be the opposite. It's like, go ahead, do it. It doesn't matter how much it hurts. So it's like, it's a combination of a role that we play. Sometimes it could be superwoman, superhero, but also a part of us that's very frightened, that's very small. And one of the ways to deal with this part, because every time that you step outside a comfort zone, let's say you want to ignite something inside of you, that means you have to get yourself up and either physically or emotionally, mentally, spiritually, get outside the comfort zone and step over the line. There's something uncomfortable. It's like it maybe butts up against the belief. It's like, I haven't done this before, so the gremlin comes in and says, hey, whoa, wait a minute. We have to protect you. That's dangerous territory. So a way to expose the gremlin and work with the gremlin is to answer some of those questions. So what's the gremlin's name? Can't use any of your name. What's your favorite say? Does it have a routine? Is there a purpose? What's the role? Often it's the one of protection. How does it operate? When does it show up? If I could love this gremlin for a moment, what would it say? And I recommend that you say it out loud. By the way, if you send me an email, and there will be information afterwards, I can send you these questions, and so that if you can't, write them down. So let me give you some of my personal gremlin. And the first time I did this was like really almost 25 years ago. So I told you I'm from Germany. So my gremlin's name is Brunhilde, and she's the superwoman. She's like super strong, and she can do anything. And she was like, I don't need anybody. And I loved, when I was a kid, I used to sit in front of the record player, and I used to love to listen to the Siegfried saga. It's just like, it had everything: drama, betrayal, love. And she was a Valkyr and she was, she was invincible. So that was her name that I came up with. And that's how I felt. But she was also very sad, and she didn't really know how to connect with people. And that really described me. I wanted to be strong, and I didn't really know how to connect with people. And favorite saying was, I don't need that, or I can do this alone. I don't need you. And it was also a direct experience of my childhood. There was many, many times where I was alone, and I had to do many complicated things, that I had to do alone. My routine was to always get myself into a situation where you would see that, yes, of course I'm alone. Of course there's nobody to help me. Of course it's difficult. Now, it's not so there now, but I can still sometimes see traces of that. It's like, I tried everything and look at that, it didn't work out, and I'm all alone, and I sort of have to figure out how to make it happen. Its purpose was to protect me through strength, but also through isolating myself so that I could really so people wouldn't hurt me. But of course, we know that doesn't work. We isolate ourselves and we don't have anybody in our environment, and then we still get hurt because it doesn't really work that way. So it showed up when there were challenges, when I felt like my back was against the wall, and when I felt attacked, but oftentimes when I was in a situation where it was really challenging. And I did this a few times. So I moved myself from Germany to Israel. I didn't speak any Hebrew. It's very difficult when I got to Israel. Then I moved myself. Actually, I lived in Nicaragua and in Guatemala and Mexico for a while. I didn't speak any Spanish. And then I came to the United States. I did speak some English, but, and all the paperwork and immigrations and, all that kind of stuff. And then now I'm here in Israel. And even though I did speak some Hebrew, and I do speak Hebrew, it was a challenge. So oftentimes I put myself in really challenging situations, whether it was physically by living in certain countries or in relationships and work-wise, so that I could show my grandma, hey, you're needed. You really need to be there. So I eventually learned to love my gremlin. And now she's not very present sometimes. But loving that gremlin was really a turning point for me. And let me show you what else I want you to do with the gremlin. So loving the gremlin really made a difference for me. And later I learned that the gremlin was teaching me to love all parts of me and to give me the opportunity to create, different lives for myself, to put myself in different circumstances. And I did this beautiful exercise where I gave my gremlin a different job. So instead of her protecting me, she became my explorer. And one day I said to her, hey, listen, I want you to take all this energy that you have, and I want you to go out and explore things and find new things. And when it's difficult for me, I want you to take my hand and say, hey, let's check this out. And, be my confidant and be the wings beneath my wings. And so she turned really into that. And it's been fun. So I've been using her a lot in doing new things and exploring things and having new experiences. And it's been good. So that is my personal experience. I encourage you to do it and also to think about your gremlin. And for starters, what you can do is get to know your gremlin. Okay. So maybe you don't want to answer all these questions and you want to, don't feel so comfortable with the gremlin, but maybe a little bit, maybe answer one or two of those questions. Love your gremlin, be very kind. So instead of fighting with the gremlin saying, get away and I want to kill you and those kind of things, love the gremlin, learn from your gremlin. And then last but not least, see if once you've known your gremlin and identified your gremlin, if you can assign the gremlin a new role, because that will be super, super, super powerful for you. So that's the gremlin. And the gremlin is good for everything in life, but certainly when you want to ignite your passion, when you want to stoke your fire and, get your power, get it on. Second showstopper is limiting beliefs. And we don't talk enough about limiting beliefs because it's everywhere. And limiting beliefs, sell, limiting beliefs keep us small, and we have lots of those. What are there? They are the external, internal conversation that we have. And most of the time they come from an experience that you had that didn't go so well. And then you associated a feeling with it. Okay. So it's like, I fell down and, oh my God, walking is difficult. And so I am connecting those two things. And because emotions are in a circular pattern in the limbic part of our brain, they play like a record. So we hold on to them until we resolve them, mainly most of the time in a very conscious way. How do we recognize them? We recognize them because there's a lot of sort of victim talk. I can't, it's too hard, or I must, or I shouldn't, or, that usually is a really, really good way to recognize the gremlin. And how do we break free from them, and how we turn them into stepping stones? Let me show you. This is one of my favorite part of the talk, the presentation. So I want to talk about the brain, because the brain is a super, super important insight into how we work, how we function, why we have limiting beliefs, and what we can do about it. So the human brain is responsible for everything about us, all the experiences that we have, all our muscle movement, our breathing, whether it's voluntary, involuntarily, our analytics, our thoughts, why you came today, why I wear this black shirt, why I wear my hair the way I do, why I fall in love, why I have kids. Everything is connected to the brain. We cannot not do anything without our brain. Basically, and I'm not a neuroscientist, we have three parts of the brain. We have the rational, we have the emotional, and we have the survival. Now, the neocortex, and you see Einstein there, is the only part of our brain that is rational. What that means is that we think, we feel, language comes from that part. We need that part in order to be dreaming. We need that part in order to understand. We need that part in order to direct ourselves. So, and it's the only part that's conscious, meaning, technically speaking, you can change your thoughts. Technically speaking, you can control what comes out of your mouth, even though we know how difficult that is. But we have the ability, because that part of the brain is conscious. The next part of the brain is called the limbic system. And you see this lady crying, and it's all about the emotions. The limbic system controls, manufactures, biochemically produces emotions, and it's instantaneously. It's not something that is voluntarily. It just happens. It's automatically created. There's a neuropeptide that attaches to a receptor cell. Boom, we feel something. And until we have created a different automatic pattern and started to create different neuroplasticity, that's what happens in our brain. And then last but not least, we have the reptilian brain, and the reptilian brain is all about the fight, flight, or freeze, or fawn. So we're either fighting something, we're either, we're like frozen, or we're running away, or we're pleasing somebody. And it's very much like in nature. So, we have the lion goes, I'm going to attack you. But we also have, the snake that changes color and plays dead. And we also have the gazelle that runs away. And we also have the animals that are pleasing. It's more so in human beings, but definitely also in animals. So the reptilian is a big, big, big part of our brain. And it's usually engaged, and it overrules everything. And even in 2024, and maybe even more so in 2024, it's obvious to us that our survival, our fight, flight, freeze, or fawn rules. It takes over. It doesn't matter what you rationally think. If that's engaged, you're going to do whatever you need in order to survive. So it's totally unconscious. Now, the difference between the difference between the subconscious level and the unconscious level is that we can get to our subconscious level. It's like a beach ball. You suppress it, but when you let the beach ball up, you will realize what you're feeling. With the unconscious level, it's like the stuff that's down there, down, the tip of the iceberg, like the one down in the water. We don't want to know. We put it there for a very good reason. That's why we have it there. So we don't necessarily want to get it, but it rules us. So believe it or not, your decision making and why you are doing things or not doing things, or igniting your fire or not, has 88% to do with your subconscious level or your unconscious level. Only 10%, maybe 12% has to do with your conscious level. And as we're getting tired, people, because we're tired of the war, we're tired of all the stuff that's going on in the world, we're less able to will ourselves to do things. So as a matter and as a function and as a follow-up to that, we need to deal with our subconscious and unconscious level, because it's going to trump us and we won't be able to move, because or we either we were fighting all the time, or we were playing dead, or we running away, or pleasing people, and we're not going to be very functioning very much. So it's more and more becoming imperative that we actually take care of subconscious and unconscious level. Couple more things about the brain. Some of you have probably heard about Pavlov and the dogs. And basically what he did is he conditioned the dogs and the response by getting them to salivate when he was ringing the bell. Now, eventually the response went away in healthy dogs. So after a while, they stopped salivating when he wasn't bringing them the food. In the unhealthy dogs that were beaten or abused or had some sort of issues, that response, that conditioned response stayed. And I love to say this. It's like, for me, so obvious. How healthy are we? Many of us have been abused, traumatized, trauma in all kinds of ways. And that means that responses that were conditioned, they stay. And those are the limiting beliefs that you carry around with us, of where you tell, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I have imposter syndrome. What is imposter syndrome? It's just basically a fancy way of saying, we are not good enough. And we find intellectual ways to explain it to ourselves. We have the limbic system, the emotional. There was a lady named Candace Pert. She worked for the NIH and wrote a book called The Molecule of Emotion. And she's the one that found out that these emotional, these processes that are happening, the neuropeptides attaching to receptors, happens all over our body. So we can actually have an emotional response in our toe. And it's important for us to understand. So our body and our entire body is our limbic system of where we are experiencing. So it's biochemical, it's controlled by the limbic brain, and they're located all over your body. Randy Flanagan, he's a professor out of Canada. He did a bunch of studies, and he determined that we're not super smart, not super fast, and that we're really, really slow to change. Because our subconscious and unconscious, they really hold on to those beliefs. And most of us, because we have a hard time getting to them, is the reason of why we're not experiencing our world so fast, and that there's a considerable delay. Animals are much, much faster. One of the examples is the tsunami that happened, I think about 10, 15 years ago. The animals already knew what's happening when our finest machines and detection methods didn't really tell us what was going on, because humans are slow, and even the machines that we build are slower than the animals. Last but not least, one more thing about the brain. There's basically three elements. We have the perceptions of what happens now. We go and into the past, we look at a comparable situation, and then we're generating actions based in the present that are stored in our brain in the past. So what does that mean? That means if I'm going through a door and I've never been through that door, and I have a new door, and I go in my bank and I go, well, let me see, how was that? Was that fine? Was that safe? Okay, that was safe. I can do it. And then my muscles and my body will do whatever it needs to do so I can successfully walk through the door. Know that a lot of these memories, of course, are so associated with trauma and intergenerational trauma. However, oftentimes, or in some cases, what we've been able to do, and I talked about this a little bit ago, is that we've been able to will ourselves against it. So even though you might be afraid of elevators, some of us have been able to will ourselves to get into an elevator. But as our resources and our fire, gets lower and lower and lower, that becomes harder and harder and harder. Okay, so a little bit about what I do. I do something called neuroemotional coaching, and it addresses exactly that. It's all about looking at the subconscious and unconscious and the responses that you have to circumstance. Could be something that you want. It could be something that you're dealing with, whether it's I want to make more money, or I want to experience myself as happy. I want to be a successful manager. I want to communicate differently. So my whole method to coaching is to look at the brain, the way it works, and then to neutralize those automatic responses that we have and upgrade our limiting beliefs. And so that all the limitations that you have about yourself, about I'm not good enough, or I can't be a big boss, or I can't be a CEO, or I can't have a, this, or I can't get pregnant, or whatever it is in your world, whether it's personally or professionally, that you can neutralize that so that you can fast, really, 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 really fast move yourself in action and thereby ignite that fire. Because oftentimes the reasons of why it's not there is because there's some limiting belief, even though there might actually be some physical fatigue. So that's what I do. It's called neuroemotional coaching. And if that interests you, find me, sign up for a 30-minute free consultation. I tell you all about what I do. If you put in the message that you watch this presentation, I will give you some extra time. So, and I love this. I feel like this is the reason I'm coaching. This is why I'm here on the planet, to assist as many people as I can. Okay, so that was all about neuroemotional coaching. We're in the home stretch. So let's talk a little bit about prep work. What can you do? So certainly you can call me and have a session with me, and that will do a lot of good for you and will get you going. But there's some other things that you can do, or you can do it in addition. So one of my favorite tools is called freeform writing, because most of you will probably feel like you're stuck and you don't know how to get yourself unstuck. Freeform writing is a tool where you sit down with a piece of paper and a pen, not on the computer, and where you actually take half hour without your phone and you start writing. You write all the stuff that you're feeling. I'm upset. I hate this. Maybe you have a relationship that you didn't finish. Maybe you are really mad at yourself. Maybe you can't forgive yourself. Maybe you hate your boss. Maybe you're really mad at what's going on, with the Supreme Court. Whatever it is, you take that half hour and you just dump it all on the paper. Before you do that, you have already committed yourself to burning it. So by the time that you're finished with your half hour, that stuff is burned. Okay? So you figure out how you're going to burn it, and you're committed to not reading it and burning it right away. So there's two reasons. A, when we know that something is going to be destroyed, we feel that we can go deeper. We can actually put all our dirty laundry and all the things that we feel on that piece of paper. But also it's a purification, because it's a way for you to let yourself feel as deeply as possible and then, get it out. One letter is probably not going to do it, but you can write about the same thing a couple of times. So maybe I am frustrated with a person. So I write a letter, and then in that process, there's some other stuff that comes up. So I write another one. What's important is that you stay with it and that you follow my instruction, that you write, you don't get disturbed, and that you burn it right away. That's one. Two is letting go rituals. So you can design it for yourself. Sometimes to go through some things, to clean out the closet and all the clothes that we have there that we are never going to wear, or old love letters from a lover or something like that. Maybe it's time to let go of that. And you can design it. We have a lot of rituals in our society, in every culture, and anything from rites of passage to letting go. So maybe it's time for you to quit your job, or maybe it's time for you to make some big changes, or could be just opening up the kitchen drawer and throwing some stuff out, or recycling, or giving it away, things that you're not using, in order to create some space in your life. Last but not least, it's about creating completions, and sort of they all kind of go together. So think about, where are some areas in my life where I'm not complete. These could be conversations. These could be things that you need to organize. This could be, declaring things complete. I'm working on my will right now. It's a big incompletion that I have. So incompletions hold energy and they keep you stuck. So another good tool is visualizations. So you can spend some time, and the YouTube and the internet is a great tool for that, to identify your future self, spend some time with your future self, and just allow yourself to dream. If you want me to suggest some things, I'm a big fan of Jose Silva. You can write down future self, Jose Silva. You will find some meditations, or you can also look at the Coaches Training Institute, Future Self. There will be some visualizations, meditations that you can do, or you can do it on your own. You can do it in a writing process and just get in touch with, hey, what would my future self be? And how do I see myself maybe in a week from now or in a year from now? You don't have to go that far, because 5 years is a long time. So just spending some time really getting in touch with that future self. And maybe another way to do it is for the next week, take 5 minutes every day and just think about your future self and what he or she would want to experience in the next week, month, or year. So these are some things to get started. In addition, you could look at some of the accomplishments that you've done. You see, I've written this twice here, but spend some time to identify your accomplishments and the skills that you used in order to make those things happen. I love to give this exercise. It's like 5 accomplishments and personal, 5 accomplishments professional. You can also identify your values and your intentions. A big part of coaching is often to talk about, what's important to me, what are my intentions, and then align the intention with the goals and create action steps. So that is basically a formula for you to get started. You can spend some time really committing to this process, and then look at what's really in my way, work with your gremlin, look at some of the blocks that you have. And then you're like, okay, I've created some space inside myself. So now what do? Okay, let me feel good about myself. And the way I can feel good about myself is by identifying some accomplishments and identifying my values, intentions. If you need help with that, again, I'm here for you. I work a lot with this, and I'm happy to give you some guidance. Last but not least, I want to talk a little bit about digging for gold. And this is when you spend some time identifying your values and intentions and your goals and your action steps, and you really make sure that they're aligned with your values, oftentimes, and your beliefs. So what is oftentimes in the way is that we don't spend enough time making sure that everything is aligned. I had a client years ago who had like a Kentucky Fried Chicken, and she herself was a vegetarian. And it was a family business, and they had about 15 Kentucky Fried Chicken stores, restaurants. And there was a misalignment between her values and who she is. So we needed to work on that, and so that she could find a way of being a successful CEO in that business. So dig deep, take a look. Does this make sense? Am I aligned with that? And if you're not, don't give up. Continue to find out why you're not aligned with that, with your goal, and what you need to do in order to adjust it. Okay, so I'm actually a few minutes over. So that is what it's all about today. Igniting your inner power, your inner passion. If you're interested in continuing this conversation, I have a monthly newsletter you can sign up for. And on my homepage, actually, as a lead magnet, I give away a booklet that talks about some of those skills that I mentioned today and how to deal with the emotions. Because in my opinion, what's often the first thing that's in the way is our emotions and our survival mechanisms. And so I give you a guide on how to deal with that. If you're interested in working with me, here is a little bit of a discount to make it sweeter. I give you 10% off. And then find me on Instagram, follow me on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. I love to connect with you so that we can stay in touch. With that, I thank you for coming, and I really encourage you to light your fire and let your light shine and be the difference in the world that you always wanted to be. Take care.